Okay, so here we are. This is not the usual setting, but what is it they say? You can have a podcast anywhere you want. So why not live up to that? But today we're going to be talking about the day that I found out I had autism, which is not something I'm really proud of. I don't even know if I'm going to air this. Um, Maybe I should have had like a shot of something. Oh damn, look at that. But anyhow, yeah, I remember the day I got diagnosed with it, and I remember I was at the psychiatrist, and unfortunately, it's a pretty simple process. Let me turn on this car. This Arizona heat is roasting my nuts. It might just turn into peanut butter. But anyhow, um, yeah, I remember when I did the. I remember when I just got a text from somebody, but um, I remember people had always told me that maybe you were autistic. Just not until my later years, like up until I was like 22, people started telling me. Now the reason was because I would talk about the same thing over and over, which is like a common sign of autism, in the sense that it's a linear fixation, and that linear fixation can be anything. It can be several. It can be one thing, heavily focused on one thing or a few topics, or it can be changing, where it comes in periods where one day you like for 3 months you hyperfixate on this, another month, 3 months later you like. A lot of people like to say autistic people like trains. Now I don't know how true that is, but I will say this: I did talk a lot about Ryan Reynolds and Maroon 5, and people thought I was gay, and I wasn't, and I may or may not look like it. I don't know. I hope not. Maybe on this video, it's the video I disable comments, but you know what they say. Disabling comments is a sign of weakness, and I wasn't raised to be a pussy. Maybe I look like one, but I wasn't raised to be one. And anyhow, um, I end up making, people. Somebody told me I may have autism because, I say things and I say things that I shouldn't say. Uh, I say like things that are offensive. I intervene. I don't let people talk. Um, oh, I do like I love schedule a routine. Like one of the things I also like to do aside, I know like a lot of the Ryan Reynolds things, but not just that. Another thing I know is just this. A lot. There's people here watching me, but not watching me like Edward Snowden. But anyhow, yeah, one of the things I did was I knew a lot about Ryan Reynolds, like Ryan Reynolds movies, Ryan Reynolds like tabloids, Ryan Reynolds movies that hadn't come out yet. It was I was practically like a stalker. No, but that's not really what it is. You just know a lot, and you're so interested in it, and it captivates your attention. So you keep studying on it and keeping up on it. And oftentimes I'd watch the same movie again. I can't tell you how many times I watched The Proposal, and that's a chick flick. And I can't tell you how many times I saw Deadpool 1 and 2. When Deadpool and Wolverine came out, you know how many times I saw that shit in theater? I saw it probably like 25 times. I spent more money on that than the average cokehead spends on crack and coke in the average week. And I spent so much money on the merchandising, and I even went as far as to somehow acquire those the movie posters. I acquired them in an unethical fashion. Don't know how. If you get what I mean, you get what I mean. I acquired them without. I can't say how. I can't say any more information. But anyhow, I ended up acquiring them, and like the thing with like with Maroon 5, I know a lot of their songs. I know stuff like where he was born. I know his address. No, I'm kidding. But I know a lot of stuff, and people would tell me, me. I had a friend who was like, you might be autistic. You listen to the same music. You never get tired of it. You listen to. He got so tired of listening to Maroon 5 that he couldn't even listen to it when he was at the mall and it was playing randomly. So I felt bad for this man. And anyhow, eventually, I end up, I have a psychiatrist, of course, and I have a therapist, but I go to my psychiatrist and it's online, and I tell, it's an online web call, and I tell him, I was wondering if you guys possibly did screenings for autism, which, it's called autism spectrum disorder, because the funny thing is this, it was called Asperger, and the thing about it is that it was controversial because here's the thing: it was named after Hans Asperger, who was a Nazi lover, a Nazi empathizer. So they didn't want to have all these kids who were autistic at the time, or like who had Asperger's syndrome, to be named after something related to Nazis. Now that's a pretty good reason to change the name. So they changed it to autism, autism, and then Rain Man came out, and everybody thought if you have autism, you must be a goddamn socially inept genius, which here's the thing too about autism. I don't know why they portray autistic people as like they never portray them as cool or handsome. Now I know like there's a thing called autistic coded characters, and they tend to be like cartoons or anime. But like my question is, when is Brad Pitt gonna play an autistic person who's a fucking serial like not a serial killer, but like an assassin who kills bad people? You know, like here Invader Zim, I think he's autistic. I think that fool's autistic. Every time somebody talks to him, he interrupts them. He doesn't get that nobody likes him. He doesn't understand social cues. And you can say, well, it's not because he's an alien, but it's like, yeah, he might be a goddamn alien, but he can handle himself on Earth, no issue. Um, he can speak the language. So is he really an alien, or is this a universal language, or did aliens come before humans and they just they made the language English? They created it, English language, or because it really that's a pitfall, so obviously the aliens created it, and then somehow the aliens learned the humans learned it, but yeah, Rayman makes you look, no, there's some autistic people who kind of are like that, where they're not verbal, and now it's called autism spectrum disorder, but I've never watched Rayman and I've seen clips of it, and nobody who has autism really acts like that. I mean, people who are autistic, if they watch this movie, they're probably gonna get pissed. Um, but like the good doctor goes around. That's a show about a doctor who somehow made it through college and university as an autistic person and had his residency, and nobody reported him. Nobody filed a restraining order because this motherfucker's crazy. If he was my doctor, I'd be scared. I'd rather have Jeffrey Dahmer or like Richard Ramirez be my doctor. You know? Oh, I don't know how we went from McDreamy from Dr. Grey's Anatomy to this bullshit, having a creepy like doctor who freaks out has an autistic burnout every 10 seconds. But I wouldn't trust this motherfucker at all. And also, God, I spilled a lot of like sanitizer in my car, like a whole big bottle like this shit. Literally, this whole thing was filled of sanitizer and it all spilled in my car. And I think I'm getting like fucking the fucking fumes. God damn, this might be my last video. But anyhow, like yeah, that I was at so I didn't really want to be like I didn't want to like say I had autism spectrum disorder, but it's a questionnaire and they ask you, you know, do you tend to fixate on certain subjects and do you tend to know so much about them? Do people tend to say you interrupt too much? Do people, do you have like a big need for routine, or when your routine is disrupted, do you feel, you know, angry or confused, or do the sound bother you? Do bright noises, or do, bright lights bother you? Things like that. Do people often say, you seem emotionless because you don't portray emotional cues well, or you can't read them? Like social rules, like when somebody's speaking, you shut up and you let them speak. You don't overtake the conversation. Something that's obvious. Um, what's another one? Uh, maybe you don't say, so hey, I saw that you and your boyfriend were fighting. Is everything okay? That's very direct. Autistic people can be very direct, and it can be interpreted as rude. And autistic people, I'm sure, you'll see love on the spectrum. It has not done anything good for autistic people, in my opinion. It's made us seem more, and I'm talking about, those are a different group of people. Like if I signed up, they probably wouldn't fucking take me. They'd be like, this motherfucker is way too functioning, and yeah, they're probably right. But the other thing is that show makes those are the ones that have it the most. Like it's an accentuated case. And I don't know how many of them have it that way because it's kind of hard to quantify autism. But that's just one of the things, and it's hard for autistic people to find other people. But anyhow, when I was taking the test, I was, they give you like a format to answer the questions. I think it's like yes, no, not really, or like from a scale of 1 to 5, something like that. And I was kind of like lessening them. Like I was trying to lie to alter and tamper with my diagnosis. So instead of saying like a 5, which would be yes, or like I would say like a 3 or a 4. And he was like, "Do you ever have moments when you know when people say, man, you talk too much about a certain thing and they get mad about it?" And I said, I said, yes, But people, my friend tells me that he's like, well, do they tend to get angry? And I was like, shit, he knows. Like, this is obviously a trained guy, a psychiatrist. He knows. So I was like, no, not really. No, but really he did. And he really got mad about me talking about Maroon 5 and Adam Levine. And every time he would bring up something about Ryan Reynolds, he'd get mad because I knew about it before him. So he was trying to trip me up. And, you know, yeah, but one of the things is that autistic people do struggle to get some, not necessarily get laid. I'm sure, like they're not all weird. And then there's some people who have autism who go their entire life without being diagnosed with it. So keep that in mind. But that was the day I found out I was autistic. Since then, I've committed more to Maroon 5. I have, you know, I have all their CDs of Maroon 5. I have two shirts of Maroon 5. I have Maroon 5 as my wallpaper. Uh, I've, with the, Ryan Reynolds, I have two shirts of Maroon 5. And then same thing with Ryan Reynolds. I don't have two shirts, but I've never stopped watching him, and even with all the drama, but I've stuck to my routine. I go to In and Out every day. You know, what else? Oh, I keep my headphones in because the thing with these autistic people is they don't really like outside noise because it's too much. Or sometimes if they wear like I wear sunglasses inside sometimes, but I listen to my music and I keep it on loud so I don't have to worry about the outside world because it's too loud. Um, but yeah, that was the day I found out I was autistic. So here's a lesson: if you think you're autistic, don't go to psychiatrists if you don't want to know the answers to questions you don't want to know the answers to, because you might not like it.